just going to talk you through the options for your title for your Betjeman Marxism essay. I don't know what that has to do with coffee, but it just looked really nice, so I chose it. So this bit is going to sound really obvious, but you've got to choose your title from the list of 8 options, but you have to make sure that you fully understand it. Don't waste your time trying to plan and write coursework for a title that you haven't been able to get your head around. If you've chosen a title because you like the sound of it, but then you find that you don't really get it, even after you've watched this video, talked to your teacher about it, had a good think, choose a different one. And then once you've got your title, carefully choose the right poems. I will make some mention of particular poems in the video, but it is ultimately up to you to pick the best 3 in terms of the title that are going to allow you to write in detail and have a really good debate. Okay, so your first option, number 1, using the Marxist ways of reading section of the critical anthology, consider how far you agree with the view that Betjeman presents power and money as ultimately corrupting in your chosen 3 poems. So you need to understand that the key Marxist idea here is looking at the sort of privileged elite through their social power and economic status, and the assumption that that makes them inherently corrupt. So make sure you understand the idea of corruption, which is the abuse or misuse of that power and influence. Poems that should come to mind might be executive and advertising pays in particular, perhaps Hunter Trials as well. But where you've got the debate is how corrupt the powerful characters seem to be from what they tell us, from the way they behave, but also, is that actually what Betjeman is presenting? Is that what you're reading into it as a modern reader or by applying a Marxist critique? Or is it something that Betjeman is deliberately trying to argue? And that might vary between the different poems that you choose. But you have to be very clear in whichever poem you choose about the individual, what their sort of power and status is, how we see that through the poem, and to what extent they are misusing it, whether they are corrupt and dangerous, and whether there's definitely a link. So, if a character seems to be particularly corrupt, is that a product of their socioeconomic position, or is that presented as a more human evil, for example? Okay, now I've put these 2 together because they are sort of the same title, but just worded in different ways. And if with the first title, the statement and the sort of view in it are starting from an assumption that Betjeman is criticising the corrupt nature of the powerful in society, these 2 titles allow you to take an almost opposite view that yes, he's critical, but he is not attacking it. It's a gentle criticism. So option number 2, using the Marxist ways of reading section of the critical anthology, consider how far you agree with the view that Betjeman's presentation of the wealthy is more critical than sycophantic. That's kind of following on from the ideas of the first title, but particularly setting up this debate between whether he is sycophantic, which is just a nice posh word for sucking up to, or whether he's actively, definitely criticising the behaviour of these wealthy people. In number 3, using the Marxist ways of reading, how far do you agree with the view that Betjeman is the licensed fool of the wealthy? He points out the foibles, but in no way advocates a change to the system in X, Y, and Z. And so actually, they're worded from an opposite angle, but they are the same debate, which is he sycophantic? So when it says in option 3, he points out the foibles, but in no way advocates a change to the system, that is the same as saying he is sycophantic. Foible means you're sort of an error or a sort of silly or incorrect thing you do, but it's a gentle, teasing way of looking at it. So if you point out someone's foibles, you're mocking what they do wrong, but only in an affectionate, playful, or sycophantic way. So what you've got is a sort of a line between, on one hand, thinking he's sycophantic and he's just playing up to this rich audience, and on the other hand, that he's actually genuinely critical. And that idea of him being a licensed fool is almost like he is a sort of feste of the wealthy. The wealthy class, he is their jester who they allow to make fun of them, but only because they know he won't really criticize them and he won't really ask for any kind of change to the status quo. So both titles are really the same debate, and whichever you chose, you would really have to acknowledge both sides, but it's sometimes better to go with the title that you perhaps agree more with the way it phrases, so that it's easier for you to kind of build up your argument. Always make sure that you're in a position to really strongly agree or disagree. If you know you're going to be sitting very much on the fence, your argument is likely to end up a little bit weaker. Okay, and option 4, using the Marxist ways of reading section of the critical anthology, explore the view that Betjeman's portrayal of the wealthy is more gentle mockery than harsh criticism in X, Y, and Z, is the same debate again, but in much clearer, simpler terms. So what I would say is if you like the ideas of the last two titles, but you were a little bit unsure about the phrasing or some of the key words, then this is a title for you. Because again, you've got this sort of division. Is it gentle mockery or is it harsh criticism? The way that the wealthy rich characters in his poetry stands out to you, which of those angles occurs to you more? If you chose this title, you could still draw on the words and ideas from the previous titles, but if you're confident with those phrases such as the licensed fool or sycophantic or foibles, probably better to just use those titles. Okay, option number 4, using the Marxist ways of reading section of the critical anthology, explore the view that Betjeman criticises modern society in X, Y, and Z. Now, it's a bit broader, this title. The first 3 really pointed you towards looking at the sort of wealthy elite, the upper class. That was how they were explicitly Marxist. Here, it's more a slightly broader idea that by criticising the structure of modern society, that's what gives the poetry a Marxist significance. Because if we're starting from the assumption that modern society is largely capitalist, any criticism of it therefore sort of relevant and interesting from a Marxist angle. So as I say, this one's much broader, which might appeal to some people, but could also be problematic if it means that you try and cover too much or you're less clear in your specific argument. But really, it's asking you to look at the sort of social structures or hierarchies or ideas that are presented in the poem. And again, similar debate to the last ones, is Betjeman critical of them? Or alternatively, do you think he's just gently mocking? Is he just having a little laugh at? Is he really undermining the structure of modern society? Or is he simply pointing out and laughing? And this one allows you maybe a slightly broader choice of poems. So, for example, Slough, it's much harder to see how you could get a lot on Slough for some of the previous titles, whereas this would link well to his presentation of sort of class life within an industrial town. Again, I've paired two of the options together here to try and point out the important difference between them. They're very similar. So using the Marxist ways of reading section of the critical anthology, explore the view that Betjeman is always critical of the wealthy in, or that Betjeman's presentation of powerful people is always critical in. So firstly, the sort of area of debate that you're being given is the phrase always critical. And shock horror, it's very similar to the other titles. It's that continuum of whether he's this radical progressive figure who is attacking the status quo and undermining the capitalist hierarchy of English life, or whether he is sometimes critical but not always, whether he's never really critical because he doesn't point out solutions or he doesn't actually lambast the rich and powerful for what they do. So it's a similar debate, but I think the reason that I want to just pair these two together is just to make sure that you're really comfortable on the difference between the wealthy and powerful people. Depending which of these titles you do, it narrows your focus on what you're actually examining in terms of Betjeman's criticism. So if you do number 6, for example, the wealthy certainly suggests the very upper class part of society. So to give you an example, Executive is a poem that deals with new money and sort of middle class wealth. So you could talk about it in wealth, but is he actually as powerful? So if you're looking at question 7, presentation of powerful people, is the executive actually particularly powerful, or is he just sort of new money, nouveau riche? So it's that kind of difference between something like Hunter Trials that looks at the very upper class lifestyle versus his presentation of mobility, social mobility, and new money in other poems. So be very clear whether you're looking at wealth or power, and in your poem, how that actually occurs. Again, another example that would work that is important here might be in Westminster Abbey. Is the woman speaking to us in that poem actually particularly powerful? Perhaps not in a patriarchal society, but she is definitely wealthy. Yes, she's more powerful than other people without her privilege, but it's not necessarily her power that is being criticised so much as her wealth. And that's the difference that these titles are leading you to think about. Last but not least, number 8, using the Marxist ways of reading section of the critical anthology, explore the view that Betjeman sympathetically portrays the impact of modern life on working class people. Very different in its focus, similar issues, similar Marxist concepts, but it is asking you to particularly look at the experience of working class people, which is not given a huge amount of attention here, but is in a couple of poems. And so it's just shifting the argument away from how Betjeman portrays the powerful, whether you think it's sycophantic or critical, to the way that he portrays those beneath them. So you're particularly thinking about Slough and about Edwardian Sunday, which give us clearer images of sort of ordinary life versus that of the rich and powerful. But you could also look at the attitudes and the perspectives that you get from powerful figures, particularly maybe in Advertising Pays or in Westminster Abbey, where you have those kind of rich, powerful characters looking down on those beneath them. And so the view that it offers you is whether his portrayal is sympathetic. Does the way Betjeman writes about these issues show a sympathy for their experience, which would imply that he is critical of the wealthy and the capitalist system? Or do you think that his portrayal of them is just matter of fact? Here's the problem, but I don't really care. Is it even sneering, voyeuristic? Does he look down on these ordinary working class existence? Is he more interested in the foibles of the rich than the experience of the working class? And they are the 8 titles that we've got for you to choose from. Hopefully it's been useful here and a little bit more about them. Hopefully they've been clarified rather than made worse. So now you need to make your choice. And I've just kind of summarised here the things that you should be thinking about while you're watching this video and while you're doing your planning. Do you understand the keywords and phrases? I've really tried to explain and demystify any of the important words and phrases, but possibly there are some that I've missed. Check that you really understand each part of the title that you're going to choose, that you have a meaning in terms of what that actually is asking you to do, and check that meaning matches up with what your teacher thinks. Are you clear on the content and the debate of your title? Do you know what it really demands you to cover? So for example, if you're doing the wealthy, anything that mentions the wealthy, separate from the powerful, are you clear on the difference between them? Are you clear on the sort of class that your title asks you to look at? And are you clear on the debate? The title is offering a view. Do you understand which side of the debate that view is on in relation to yourself? Do you know what the counter argument that might need to be acknowledged and accepted is? Remember, there is no need for 50-50 essays of yes and no, but you should always acknowledge that there is a debate, that there are other ways of seeing it. Do you have your own opinion? Do you feel strongly about this and know what you're going to argue? That will make your introduction and your conclusion much easier. And are you ready to choose your 3 poems? If you're at this stage and you're looking back thinking, oh, I don't really know the poems well enough, then you need to go back to those videos and that support and resources that are there before you can make sensible, intelligent choices. So, good luck.